Donald Trump riding high after a triumphant debate night where his opponent malfunctioned in real time. Today he was rallying in deep blue Virginia, a state he's on the cusp of flipping in November.
Did anybody last night watch a thing called The Debate? He got the debate rules that he wanted. He got the date that he wanted. He got the network that he wanted. With the moderates he wanted. No amount of rest or rigging could help him defend his atrocious record.
Janine, I mean, Joe Biden had it teed up perfectly, and he couldn't meet the expectations.
He couldn't meet the expectations, but it happened as soon as he walked over to the podium. I looked at him and I said, he looks so pasty, and he kept looking up to the left. I don't know, up to his left. I don't know what was there because the moderators were right in front of him. And it just kind of looked like he would zone out, and he'd look at Donald Trump. Then Donald Trump didn't look at him for 1 second. Did you notice that? He would not look at the guy. But the crazy part is this is everything they wanted, and I don't know this to be the case, but I get the sense that, you know, they kind of know they've been hiding Joe. They kind of know that they've had to come out and clean up after Joe, so they've limited him to yes and no answers. And so I get the sense, Dana, that what happened was, you know, Joe said, I'll prove it. You let me do this debate, and I'll prove how good I am. I'll prove that I'm ready. And he totally blew it. And, you know, I just think that one of the things that happened was that Donald looked youthful. He had color in his President Trump had color in his face. You know, he was energetic. He responded. He wasn't obviously over-exorcised in terms of this. But one of the things I liked about Trump, and I haven't had a chance to say this, he said, I wish that Biden were a great president, and I wish that I didn't have to be here. And I really believe that, you know, because everybody says, oh, it's always about him. No, Donald Trump could have a magnificent ending to his life. And Joe Biden deserves a quiet ending to his life. But his wife, as far as I'm concerned, is committing elder abuse, because there's no question in my mind that Jill is the one pushing him. Jill is the one who announced when he was running again. It's pathetic.
And he hit the ground running today and said, we are the party, the Republicans, of common sense.
Yep.
I think you're going to hear that a lot.
So I always love to see not just a fundraising, which the Biden team says they raised a bunch of money. Who's writing checks? I'd love to know how much extra money you have. But I thought President Trump was pretty gracious to Biden last night. I mean, he could have buried him with just even with a look, and he resisted. And I think that's partly because every human has empathy for others. Like if you're in that situation, you're like, wow, that guy is dying on stage, and he let him do it. And I thought that was right. But the other thing I like to see is, where do you go after a big night? And so Biden goes to North Carolina, and I think that's because they believe that Arizona and Georgia are gone. So they're going to try to flip a Trump state. And Trump won North Carolina by just a little bit, like 0.2 of a point. So they're thinking, well, maybe I guess we could put some money there. Friends of mine who live there say they're spitting in the wind. I think it's very interesting that Trump is in Virginia today, because Youngkin has been a very good Republican governor there. He's popular. Again, it's close. But if Virginia's on the table for Trump, and New Jersey, we mentioned at the beginning, that means everything's on the table there. I think that what President Trump and his team are doing is they always are running like they're 5 points behind. And partly that's because the media always makes them feel that way, right? And that's good. You should always try to run like that. The Biden team today, they're running like they're 5 points ahead. And I don't understand it.
No one understands it. Do you understand it?
Well, I do know Trump hit the ground running. Biden hit the ground. You know, a message to Republicans who buy into all the anti-Trump hate from your friendly Democrats. You got to remember, if it wasn't Trump and DeSantis, the hysteria would be exactly the same as they had for Romney, all the way going back to Reagan. Every Republican poses a threat to democracy because democracy is code for Democrats. So they can't, they use the same line every time. The pivot, though, you're noticing a lot is that they're both bad. You know, Biden was bad, but Biden was terrible. But, you know, Trump, he lied. There is no comparison between the two because one choice was challenged and tested, Trump. The other one was shielded and covered up, Biden. So you could say Biden's unfit, but Trump lies. Sorry, Trump beat his Republican challengers. We already bought the product. It's baked in. We know what Trump is. He was president for 4 years. And to that lying thing, because you're going to hear that a lot, Trump doesn't lie more than Biden. He lies better, right? He uses,
what do you mean by that?
He employs hyperbole that is often benign. It's more about the size of crowds. It's directionally correct.
Interesting.
It doesn't hurt anybody. Biden tells these big lies that put people in jail, that divides the country. Find people hoax, huge, causes wars, right? It's not the number of lies, it's the weight of them.
And the biggest lie was that he's a 6 handicap.
Look, they are so actively have such active disdain for one another. It was embarrassing. One of the things that I found, this is an observation about the debate. I've watched a lot of presidential debates, and they generally, at some point, the candidates talk about people. They talk about people's aspirations. They talk about the challenges the country is facing and how their presidency will uplift the country by uplifting our humanity. I didn't hear any of that last night from him. To your point about Joe Biden, I was surprised as I looked at the preparation. They never told him where to look. He was always looking off instead of looking right into the camera, which I think exacerbated some of the challenges
He was
for him.
staring into the light.
2, 3, on an issue thing. President Trump last night could not answer the question if he would withdraw us from NATO, which leads me to believe he was asked 3 times that he probably would.
Oh, come on.
Well, he said, no, Jesse, these are the facts. When asked the question, he did not say, you found the answer. 2, President Trump, when it comes to the economy and inflation, his answer is to put tariffs on products coming in from China and other places. Every economist says that drives up inflation. I only make this point for Democrats. If we get smothered with acuity, we'll never get to the issues. And there are a lot of issues to get to.
And the lies that Biden makes are objective lies that you can prove. 16 American troops died, and the Border Patrol supported. I mean, they are concrete lies.
Yeah, like
So
cannibals ate his uncle.
Harold.
He said he would withdraw us from NATO.
No,
Look at the clip. Look at
Really?
the clip.
I don't think so.
You Google it. Just Google it.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.